Hello everyone and welcome back. If you are new here, my name is Leanne Brittle and I am your Miss North Dakota International 2020, and this is my YouTube channel where I talk about my personal stories with my disabilities and as well as other disabilities as well. And my goal with my platform of Disabilities Not Impossibilities is to not only educate the world but also to empower the people with a disability as well. So a little side piece before I get started in today's topic. I am getting ready for nationals. I can't believe it's already here. I'm actually leaving today. And as you can see behind me, I have everything all packed up and ready to go. I am so excited just to meet all these amazing girls and learn about their amazing platforms. But anyway, besides the point, I'll get into today's topic of my other disability of Guillain-Barre. So this is a disease I got diagnosed with around 2017, the very beginning of it. My journey started probably around January, February. This is kind of a long story. I'll try to keep it as short as possible, but not skip any details. So it was my senior year of high school, and I played hockey. I was in the best shape of my life because state was right around the corner. But then one day I was just kind of feeling sick, and I was like, you know what? I don't want to get the other girls on my team sick. I'm just going to sit this one out because we were playing a Minnesotan team. So being a North Dakotan team, no matter what happened with that game, it didn't affect our stats. It was just kind of like a for fun game. And so I was like, you know what? I'm good. I don't want to be trapped in a bus with all these girls and get them sick and then hurt us for state. So I talked to my coach, talked to my parents. They were like, go home, rest up. We need you later. And I'm like, okay, I'll go do that. Little did I know that when I left that day, my senior year of high school, I would have never have gone back to school. And that is something just crazy. But to get into it a little more, I was just feeling sick, just like a normal, like cold, possibly flu. I was just tired all the time, really fatigued. I was slowly like not eating as much as well as drinking water, and I wasn't even really getting up at all to even like use the bathroom or anything like that. I was just on my bed 24/7, and it was just getting worse and worse. And so my parents took me in to the doctors, and they're like, oh, we think it's a stomach ulcer. And so here, take these meds, and if it's not that, after 7 days, if you don't feel better, come back in and we'll figure something else out. So 7 days went by. I don't get better. I kind of get worse, and I was taking the meds like they told me to. And then it's like, okay, let's test you for other things. And I came out positive for mono. And I got that from sharing water bottles with my teammates. Don't do that. But then we're like, okay, cool. We know mono's gonna take a beating on me. We know it's gonna take a while for me to progress and get better. But unfortunately, I just kept getting worse. And I was just even getting to the point where I needed help to like get up and go use the bathroom and stuff like that. And my parents kind of had that, parent instinct of like, something is not right. We need to take you back in. And so they kept taking me in. And honestly, I want to say since the beginning, probably the third or fourth doctor's visit, they're like, okay, this isn't right. And my doctor that I was seeing was like, okay, something's wrong, because I had a hard time getting from the chair to the examination bed, and it wasn't that big of a room. So he was concerned, and so he tested me again for mono. I came up negative, and they're like, okay, you don't have mono anymore, but what the heck is going on? And so they did a whole bunch of tests that I honestly don't even remember what they were. But then there were the tests that would took a couple hours to get the results, and they're like, hey, go home, we'll call you with results. And we're like, cool. So continued our day, and then a couple hours later, my mother got a phone call and was like, hey, we're gonna have this guy, this specialist, like neurologist guy from Minot, look at your tests, and we're gonna have a plan. We'll call you back. I'm like, okay, cool. And then probably like within the hour, they get a call, my parents get a call, and they literally said, how fast can you get to the ER? And that was something that incited fear into my parents, because they were like, what the heck was going on? And they wouldn't say anything over the phone because they didn't really know what was going on, but they knew something was wrong and I needed to get seen ASAP. They were like, we'll have a team waiting there for you. Just get there, tell them who you are, and everything will be taken care of. And my parents, my dad was driving me, and he was like, oh my gosh, what could it be? And I'm just like, it's totally fine. Like, I'm not sick. Everything's fine. I was kind of in denial of it. And but then we get there and I'm like, oh, this is fine. This is gonna do their thing, and then I'm gonna go home and I'm just gonna go back to bed. And they had a team waiting there for me. It was that specialist neurologist guy from Minot, actually, and he had some students with him. And I had the most thorough physical you could possibly imagine. Like, it was so thorough. And he was asking me like a zillion questions, and then I was starting to get anxious because, like, what if I was getting the wrong answer? But then I distinctly remember at one point he looked at me and he was like, you know you're not going home, right? And I was like, what? Like, what do you mean I'm not going home? And so from there, I was like, oh, okay. I've never stayed in a hospital before, minus when I was like born. So I was like, I don't know. Well, I don't know what this is about. And, got me checked in and everything like that. And I had so many tests done. I had so much blood work done. I got, literally at one point I had a 4-hour long MRI because they literally did it from like the top to the bottom of me. And then I was there the entire time, but then they missed like the very bottom. And so I had to go back in for more MRIs, which was totally fine. I'm glad that they were really thorough. And then I also had to do a spinal tap, and it was uncomfortable, to say the least. And that's what kind of showed, because I had so many doctors working on me, like infectious disease. I had some other doctors that I don't remember because there were just so many, and it was honestly really confusing because they were all saying different things. And then my parents and I were kind of like, hey, who the heck do we listen to? Because everybody is saying something different right now. What's going on? And of course they were all like, oh, listen to me, which I'm glad they had confidence in their own work. But then as time went on, they all kind of met together in a meeting because they were all getting frustrated at this point. I was like diminishing. I was not getting better. I was getting worse. I'm not able to walk anymore. I'm not able to feed myself. I'm not able to brush my own hair. Like, I am completely dependent on other people at this point. And so they were like, okay, we're going to chalk it up to, it showed in your spinal tap. It's this thing called Guillain-Barre. And I was like, what the heck is that? I've never even heard of that before. And so what it is, it's a very rare nerve disease. It's so rare that they actually don't really know where it comes from. They have a couple of different hypotheses, but they don't have a set, this is what it is. And where they think it comes from is from a complication of the flu shot. And that's what we're kind of thinking. My case was kind of like the perfect storm, because growing up, we used to get the flu shot, but then we always got sick from it, so we stopped taking the flu shot. But then when I went to go get my physical to play winter sports, I got my vaccines to get updated on them, so I'm up to date. But then I also accidentally got the flu shot that year. And so they're like, it could have been the flu shot, or it could have been your body fighting off the mono and went into hyperdrive and continued to attack your own body. So it was kind of like a perfect storm. They don't really know for me where it could have came from. It could have been either of those two instances. But how they describe it to me is that you have your nerves and they're running everywhere through your body, and they have a coating around it. And Guillain-Barre, what it does is it eats away at the coating, so then your nerves are exposed, and it's very painful. And for me, they said it kind of affected from like T4, like around here-ish, down. And so especially my rib area, I had really, really bad nerve pain, and it was constant. It was constant pain, and I had to take like this special med that was for nerve pain. I think it was called like gabapentin. That's what it was. I had to take that. And then to get to this point, honestly, in my hospital stay, a couple of days went by. I was in there for a while. And what was so funny is that my case was so oddball, and because I was so young and so healthy to begin with, they were like, hey, you have this interesting case. Do you mind if some students come in? And that nerve doctor had his 2 students with, so I'm like, yeah, sure, I don't care, like, I would love to be an example for education. And I thought it was going to be like 1 or 2 students. a whole classroom of kids came into my room, and I'm just laying there on my bed, 18 years old, like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And it was interesting, but then sadly at one point, like, it was really interesting because I kind of felt like a cadaver because I was just there, and I had like the instructor, like, professor, doctor, like, oh, like, pointing things out on me, you know, whatever, and he had his students all like over my bed. And at one point he asked if I could stand up, and at this point I was not able to stand up. And my nurse was like, what are you doing? Like, she can't do that. You can't make her do that. Like, no. Like, she was getting fired up. And I felt the pressure. I was like, yeah, I can try. And so they had put that belt around me, so like if I fell, like they would catch me. So I was trying to stand up. I could not do it. And I'm gonna be dead serious with you guys. I started breaking down. That was that point where I was so frustrated with myself because I couldn't do that. I couldn't even stand on my own. And I'm very much an independent person. And so that was something that I had to realize in front of an entire class of strangers and in front of this doctor guy. And that was something that was really, like, it was a lot for me at the time. And at this point, like, I hadn't really processed any of my emotions, like, leading up to it. I was kind of just like, it's fine. Everything's gonna be fine, you know, because it is fine. Everything turned out to be fine. But then I kind of broke down. They're like, okay, it's okay. Lay me back down, and then they all left. And I remember my nurse being like, why did he make you do that? And it was really funny. But then from there, I had to do a treatment called IVIG. So what that is, it's basically, it's through the IV, and it's just basically, it pumps your body full of good protein to kind of like tell your body like, oh, maybe I should stop attacking myself. And so they kind of did that, and it was so painful. It was painful. And I told my doctors about that because at this point my doctors got reduced, you know, and I think that they were so tired of trying to figure out what was going on with me. They literally told me, oh, you're not allergic enough. And that's just funny to me because the next step was plasmapheresis. And I find that ironic because I used to donate plasma. And so it's like, oh, I used to go from donating plasma to needing plasma. So it's funny how the world works. And I was like, okay. So I had to go through an entire week. And for this treatment, it was very important to do it on the hour. So whatever hour you start your treatment on, you have to stay at that hour for the rest of the week. And my ports for IVs would get so inflamed, they get so red, it would hurt like going in. I kid you not, I would cry during my treatments because it just hurt so bad. And I distinctly remember this one night. It was in the middle of the night and I was just crying because it just hurt so bad. But anyway, at the end of that, I was done with treatment and my doctor decided, they're like, okay, you're still not healthy enough to go back home. So then they transferred me to a long-term patient floor at a different hospital, and it was basically a bunch of stroke survivors, and they were a bunch of old people, and they kicked my butt when I first got there. They kicked an 18-year-old's butt with how well they were moving compared to what I was. I was there for a while, and honestly, I got to know the staff so well. They were so amazing. Like, they were the ones that kept me going. Like, I'm so grateful for nurses. If you're a nurse, any point in time, especially right now with a pandemic, seriously, I appreciate you so much, more than you can ever imagine, and you are constantly saving lives. Thank you so much for what you do. But then got better-ish. This facility, all you're doing is physical therapy and occupational therapy. I was doing it all day, every day. And eventually got to the point where I was able to go home, but I still had to go back every day to do my therapy, and time went by, and then now it's freshman year at NDSU, and I'm a biology major, and my body just couldn't handle all the kids and everything, because then I also ended up doing Greek life as well. I'm a proud member of Alpha Gamma Delta, and I kept getting sick over and over again, and then I actually got admitted again because I just wasn't doing well. And this was kind of towards the end of the day because, you know, since the first time took so long in the hospital, I was very hesitant on going back because I was just scared of like what's going to happen. But then this time, so Guillain-Barre can actually affect your respiratory system. And this time it didn't really affect my respiratory system the first time, but it did this time. And I kept failing my breathing tests. They did like 5 different type of breathing tests or something. It was more than one for sure. And then they're like, this isn't good. You keep failing these. We're going to admit you again. And then by the time they get me up to my room and stuff like that, and they were going to start treatment right away, I was doing another round of IVIG. By this time, it's about 2 a.m. in the morning. And I was not excited for it because I already knew what to expect with this treatment. And this treatment also gave me migraines. I'd never experienced migraines before in my life. And so that was a pleasure for me to enjoy with this. And then that was kind of where I was crying every night, kind of like that. And then after a week went by, I was able to go home because I was done with my thing. Oh, I kept failing my breathing tests. And my doctors, they looked at me and they were like, if you fail this last breathing test, we're gonna put you in a coma and we're gonna put you on a ventilator. And that was scary for me to hear because there were so many unknowns with that. And so I was asking, like, how long am I going to be in a coma? And they couldn't tell me. They were just like, we have no idea. It's just that when your body starts showing signs that you're getting better and you're progressing, we'll wake you up. And that was kind of scary for me to hear, and especially with a ventilator, like I didn't want the tube down my throat, and I wouldn't be able to talk with it in once I got woken up from it if I were still on a ventilator. And that was really hard for me. I'm really grateful as someone who's had Guillain-Barre never had to go through that. I know there are many cases of Guillain-Barre where people do end up on a ventilator and they are unable to speak. I've met with people who've had Guillain-Barre as well, and they had to do that, and you know, them and like their significant other or whoever they're with, family member or friend, they had to figure out a way to communicate with them because there was no other way. And that broke my heart, and it really made me realize, like, yes, I'm going through this tough thing, but anything can always be worse, you know. And but then as time went on, I kept getting sick, and I kept getting more and more sick. I ended up deciding to take a gap year from NDSU because my body couldn't keep up with it. I was constantly in and out of the hospital. It was reflecting on my grades. I felt bad. I knew I could do better, and I didn't want to waste my time and my professor's time. So I decided to take a year off, and I guess when I got better in that year, instead of re-enlisting in the fall again, I decided to go to esthetician school, and I couldn't be happier. But then within this time frame, I was constantly going to Mayo too, because they're like, why do you keep getting sick? Guillain-Barre should be a one and done thing. Like, you dip down, but then it takes a couple years, but you will eventually get back to where you were. And I was not getting there. First I dipped twice. I had treatment twice, which is so unheard of. Like, it's usually just a one-time thing. So then I went to Mayo, they did more tests, and they were like, you have an autoimmune disease. And they said it's really common for young females who have a viral infection to kind of get something like this. And so I'm like, okay, cool. But then I was telling them how I kept getting migraines. I was like, what the heck is going on with that? And it turns out one of the side effects from IVIG is meningitis. And that's something I have, something I can never get rid of. And I asked, like, what do I do now about that? And they were like, nothing. And so I'm like, okay. and honestly, throughout this entire time, I kid you not, even when I was at my worst, I was constantly like, of course, I let myself be sad because I couldn't play hockey. I played hockey my entire life. Like, I played it all year round, played it since kindergarten. It's everything I knew. It's what I wanted to do in life. That was now gone. I couldn't do hockey anymore. And so, of course, I let myself be sad. I knew I couldn't keep that bottled up. I had to let that out. But then I was like, I can't be sad about this. Like, as a whole, as a situation with me being sick, what's the point of being sad? Of course, I let myself have those emotions, but I knew I couldn't dwindle on it because that wouldn't help. I knew if my mental health was negative, so would the outcome of everything. But if I had a positive outlook and I kept pushing, I would want to keep going and I would strive and I would possibly get better faster in my mind. And so, and I just kept telling the nurses, because the nurses, I would tell them, and the new ones I met, like what's going on and stuff like that. And after they run my charts or whatever, and I was like, honestly, this will make a cool story one day. And they were like, good for you. Like, that's a good mindset. And I'm like, thanks. It's just something I had to do. And another test I had to do, sorry, side note, it was basically, I was on this table and I had to do this like 3 times, 2 here in Fargo and like once at Mayo. It hurt so bad because it was from basically the top of my head all the way down to my toes. It's a 2-part test. The first part was I had this little taser, like shocker thing, and then they would like increase the like shock volume, and it was very repetitive. And what they wanted to do is see how your nerves would react to it. And then the second part was I had this long needle and they stuck it straight into your muscle, and it had a little microphone at the end of it, and they had me flex wherever that body part was that the needle was in, so then they could hear how the nerves were responding. That one, I would be totally fine if I never had to take that test again in my life. That one hurt really bad. I can't remember what it's called though. But yeah, but now I'm doing better. September will mark 2 years since I've been in the hospital, because I was in the hospital all the time. And so that's honestly, it's such an accomplishment for me, because it's just a weight off my shoulders, and I can't wait for September to hit. I can't believe it's already been 2 years since the last time I was in the hospital. That's just crazy to me. It's also just mind-blowing to see where I started, where I was at, and now where I'm at right now. And to me, it's always crazy to think that, like, if I would have never have gotten sick, I would have never stopped playing hockey, and I would have never started doing pageants. I would have never became Miss North Dakota International 2020, and I would have never came up with my platform of Disabilities Not Impossibilities, because with my learning disabilities, I know what it's like to have that mental stigma against you, and then 2, with my Guillain-Barre, I knew what it's like to be trapped inside your own body, and that's never fun. And it's just something that I really have reflected on, and I'm really grateful for just my life in general. Oh, and the fancy term for my Guillain-Barre is acute inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy. It took me forever to learn that. In my OT, I had my therapist just say it over and over and over again so then I can learn it. But yeah, that's my story with Guillain-Barre. And if you have any questions, please let me know, comment down below. If you like this kind of like story time thing, or just how I presented this, leave a like, share it with your family members. Maybe you know somebody who has Guillain-Barre. Maybe you yourself has Guillain-Barre or has had it. But yeah, this is something that I will have forever for the rest of my life. I'll have the story forever, and I'm honestly so proud that I went through it. It's opened my eyes to so many things. But thank you so much for watching. I know this one was a longer one, so I appreciate your patience if you've made it this far. So yes, next week I will probably be going over just nationals as a whole. I will try to film a video while at nationals, but if I don't, I will post one next week. So thank you guys for your patience. Please subscribe, so you know when I post. I'll be posting weekly about different disabilities. So yeah, I will see you later. Thank you so much. Bye.